never expected that saying no to one small toy could make me feel like a bad mother. The guilt stayed with me much longer than the moment of not buying it. That day, Mira stood quietly in front of the toy shelf for a long time. She didn't cry or ask for it, only looked at a small doll with quiet hope. I glanced at the price tag and stayed silent for a few seconds before quietly saying, "Maybe next time, sweetheart." Those simple words felt much heavier than I expected. As we walked away from the aisle, I kept asking myself the same question. Was I teaching a simple way of living, or was I simply being too frugal as a parent? My name is Clara. I've always believed that a family doesn't need a luxurious life to feel happy. Lately, though, that belief has been tested by small moments that seem to appear almost every day. They aren't big needs, only little wants that feel surprisingly easy to justify. While scrolling through social media, I see friends sharing new gifts for their children. Educational toys, cute clothes, and perfect-looking weekend trips fill the screen. I smile as I look at those photos. Before I realize it, a quiet question begins to settle in my mind. Does Mira need all of those things for her childhood to feel happy? Or am I simply comparing our life to small pieces of someone else's? That question never truly leaves me. It quietly comes home with me every time I lock my phone screen. A few days later, Mira asked for something again. This time it wasn't a toy, but a water bottle with the popular character many children at school were carrying. The bottle Mira already used was still in good condition. It wasn't leaking, it wasn't damaged, and only a few months ago it had been her favorite color. I almost bought it because it wasn't very expensive. A familiar thought quietly appeared in my mind. Just this once should be fine. Then I stopped when I remembered the education savings chart taped to our kitchen cabinet. The number was still far from the goal we had planned together. I started noticing how almost every small decision felt like choosing between today's happiness and tomorrow's security. Choosing the second one often left me feeling guilty. For the first time, I quietly asked myself a question. Why did saving for the future feel like a decision that always needed to be defended? One afternoon, I sat quietly in the living room while organizing our monthly expenses. The longer I looked at the numbers, the more I realized that we were not actually lacking anything. My uneasiness was not coming from our bank account. It came from the guilt I felt whenever I chose to save instead of spend. I began remembering the choices I had made simply because I felt uncomfortable saying no. An expensive birthday gift, clothes I rarely wore, and toys that were exciting for only a few days all came back to mind. At the time, I believed those purchases made me a good mother. A few weeks later, they simply became things sitting quietly around the house without bringing lasting happiness. I slowly noticed a pattern that had been there all along without my realizing it. The guilt often cost me more than the things I ended up buying. The more often I bought something just to quiet that guilt, the more often it returned in another form. The feeling never really stayed gone for long. Our days continued much the same. Armand went to work, Mira left for school, and I moved through the familiar rhythm of caring for our home. From the outside, our family looked perfectly fine. There were no big arguments and nothing that seemed obviously wrong. Inside my mind, though, every small decision felt exhausting. Buying or saving, following a trend or holding back, meeting today's wants or protecting tomorrow. Sometimes I envied people who could shop without feeling guilty. I was the one who felt guilty for choosing not to shop instead. I started wondering when feeling secure had become something that came with guilt. The question stayed with me every time I opened a shopping app. I realized this was no longer only about money. There was a way of thinking that slowly left me feeling as though nothing was ever enough, no matter which choice I made. That weekend, I invited Mira to have a simple picnic at the small park near our home. We packed homemade food and a bottle of warm tea, nothing more. There was no expensive restaurant and no amusement park waiting for us. Somehow, that quiet afternoon on a small blanket felt calmer than many weekends before. While we were drawing together, Mira looked up at me with a quiet smile. She softly said, "Mom, I like it when we play like this." I smiled and asked if she was okay with not buying anything that day. Mira shook her head without any hesitation. "I'm just happy that Mom and Dad are here," she said before quietly returning to her coloring. Her simple words settled heavily inside my chest. In that quiet moment, I realized something I had been missing for a long time. Maybe what I had been trying to buy was not Mira's happiness, but relief from my own guilt. That night, I sat alone at the dining table after everyone had gone to sleep. Mira's words kept returning to my mind in quiet, steady waves. I slowly realized that I had been measuring love by things that could be bought. Yet what Mira remembered most was the time we shared together. I opened the education savings book that I had almost sacrificed more than once for small purchases. For the first time, the balance inside felt like a real expression of love. That was the moment a different way of seeing things came to me. I quietly called it the future gift lens. Every dollar I saved no longer felt like happiness I was putting off. Instead, it felt like a gift I was quietly sending to our family's future. The more I thought about it, the more I understood. Perhaps a lasting sense of security is the most valuable gift a mother can give her child. The next evening, after Mira had fallen asleep, I finally told Armin everything that had been filling my mind. It was never really about the money, but about the guilt that followed me whenever I chose to save instead of spend. Armin stayed quiet for a long moment before softly saying that he had never realized I had been carrying that burden by myself. There was no argument in his voice, only a quiet wish to understand. I admitted that many of my purchases had never come from real need. Most of the time, I was simply afraid of being seen as someone who could not give the best to the family. Armin gently held my hand and smiled. He quietly reminded me that the best choice was not always the most expensive one, but the one that would let us feel at peace years from now. That night, we made one simple agreement together. Before buying anything beyond our needs, we would ask whether it was a gift for today or a gift for the future. The question sounded surprisingly simple. Yet, for the first time, I felt that I no longer had to carry every financial decision on my own. A few weeks later, Mira noticed a new toy while we were walking through a shopping mall. This time, I didn't feel the same rush of panic that used to appear the moment she looked at something she wanted. I knelt beside her and quietly said, "If we don't buy this today, we can save the money for our family trip instead." Mira stayed silent for a moment before giving a small nod. We left the store without carrying a shopping bag. Strangely, the walk home felt much lighter than I had imagined. At home, we placed the saved money into a jar labeled Family Adventure. Mira smiled as if she had received something much bigger than a new toy. As I watched the jar slowly filling up, I no longer saw money that hadn't been spent. I saw a small future that we were quietly building together. I finally understood that saving didn't mean turning away from happiness. Sometimes it simply meant choosing a kind of happiness that could stay with us a little longer. I learned that saying no to one item is not the same as saying no to my daughter. Sometimes it is the most sincere way of saying yes to her future. A family does not always need more things to feel loved. They need a sense of security, presence, and calm that grows little by little each day. If this story reminds me of my own journey, I hope I will stay for the next stories in Clara's family journal. Maybe we are all learning that a strong family is built through small, thoughtful decisions. Now I want to ask you something. Have you ever felt like a stingy parent for choosing to save instead of buying something for your family? And how did you feel after seeing it from a different perspective?